Imagine you are floating, not falling, not sinking, simply floating. You are lying on the surface of the ocean. You are somewhere in the middle of the Pacific. There is no shore nearby. There is no light. The water beneath your back is warm. It is warmer than you expected. It holds you the way a deep breath holds itself before it lets go. You did not have to ask it to hold you. You did not have to earn it. The ocean simply accepts your weight. It carries you the way it has carried everything that has ever rested on it. Without judgment, without effort, without end. Above you, the sky is impossibly large. Stars hang there in their ancient arrangements. They are unbothered. They are unhurried. They have hung that way for 4 billion years. The Milky Way stretches across the darkness like a pale river of dust. Every few minutes, a single point of light traces a slow arc across the night. It disappears before you can fully register what you saw. That was a meteor, a piece of something ancient, burning up in an atmosphere it was never meant to enter. The sky accepts its disappearance without comment. It returns to its silence. The stars continue their slow, indifferent turning. There is no wind tonight. The surface of the water is almost perfectly smooth. It is a dark mirror, gently breathing. Where it breathes, the low swells rise and fall with that slow oceanic pulse. The reflected stars ripple and stretch. They blur into soft silver streaks. Then they reform. Then they blur again. The ocean below you is breathing at a rate of perhaps one breath every 20 seconds. Long, slow, rolling inhalations. Long, slow exhalations. This has nothing to do with lungs or effort. It is the breathing of something planetary. Something that does not breathe for any purpose other than the fact that it has always breathed. And always will. You do not need to go anywhere right now. You do not need to think about anything. You are simply here, on the surface of the largest thing on Earth, being held. Whatever you brought with you to this moment, you are allowed to set it down now. Whatever heaviness, whatever unresolved thing, whatever small or large worry that has been following you through the hours. The ocean is large enough. It has held heavier things than whatever you are carrying. The ocean covers 71% of our planet. If you could gather all the water in all the oceans, it would fill 1.4 billion cubic kilometers. That is a number so large it becomes meaningless. It is a number that asks to be felt rather than calculated. 1.4 billion cubic kilometers of water, salt-heavy and ancient, moving in currents that take 1,000 years to complete a single circuit of the globe. An ocean that was here before the first fish, before the first shell, before the first living thing crawled from the water onto land and blinked in the unfamiliar air. And yet, for all its vastness, we have explored less than 20% of it. Less than 20%. More than 80% of the ocean floor remains unseen, unmapped, unvisited by human eyes. More of the seafloor is unknown to us than the surface of Mars. More of it remains mysterious than the near side of the moon. We have sent probes beyond the edge of our solar system. We have not yet fully mapped the bottom of our own ocean. Tonight, we are going to change that. Tonight, we are going to let ourselves sink. Slowly, gently, all the way down. Before we slip beneath the waves, there is something to ask of you. If you find comfort in these quiet journeys, please softly tap the subscribe button on your way down so that we can continue exploring the darkness together. So that the next time you cannot sleep, there is somewhere gentle waiting for you. Now, let your body become heavy. Feel the weight of your limbs settle into whatever surface holds you. Feel the tension in your shoulders. Let it dissolve. Feel the small, persistent tightness behind your eyes. Let it soften. Feel the places in your body where you have been holding on without realizing it. The jaw, the hands, the long muscles of the back. Let them go. You do not need to hold anything right now. Breathe in slowly for a count of 4. Breathe out slowly for a count of 6. Let the exhale last longer than the inhale. Let it carry things away with it. The water closes over your face like a curtain of silk, cool and dark and absolute. All at once, the world above becomes a distant shimmer, a pale, wavering glow growing smaller and softer with every breath. The light above you looks from below the surface like a moving, scattered thing. Not solid, not reliable, already becoming something you are leaving behind. You are sinking, not with any urgency, not with any fear. You are sinking the way a leaf sinks through still autumn air. Turning, drifting, absolutely unhurried, carried downward by nothing more forceful than the gentle invitation of gravity. We begin our descent. The first zone of the ocean is called the Epipelagic Zone. It reaches from the surface down to approximately 200 meters. That is about 650 feet. It is the sunlit layer, the place where light still lives. Even here in this uppermost region of the sea, the light changes as you descend. At the surface, the water holds the warm yellow-white of sunlight. It is luminous, diffuse, alive with movement. Every ripple above you casts shifting nets of light across the water column. Long, slow, reticulated patterns of brightness and shadow drift and reform. They repeat endlessly. Divers call them God rays. They are shafts of light falling through the water like the fingers of something gentle, reaching down from above. They move with the surface. They are never still. Watching them from below, as you drift downward, there is something deeply settling. Not urgent, not alarming, just drifting, like everything here drifts, in the slow language of the sea. At 20 meters, the reds and oranges have already begun to leave. The warm end of the spectrum does not travel well through water. It is absorbed quickly. The world at 20 meters has taken on the cool, blue-green quality of early morning shade. Things look slightly different here, slightly more still. A reef viewed from 20 meters takes on a quality of quiet. The colors are muted. The urgency of the surface world has already faded. At 50 meters, the yellows have gone too. The world is blue. Only blue. A deep, saturated oceanic blue that has no equivalent on land. It is the blue of something very old and very patient. It is the blue of a place that has existed for longer than anything alive can remember. It is not a sad blue. It is not a cold blue. It is simply a deep one. The color that depth makes when it translates sunlight into itself. This sunlit zone is where most ocean life makes its home. Great schools of fish move through these upper waters. Sardines and anchovies and mackerel, turning in their thousands like a single silver mind. They move in formations of breathtaking geometric precision. They do not think about their movement, not in any way we would recognize as thought. And yet they move with perfect coordination. The entire school banks and wheels and compresses and expands. It responds to pressure waves too subtle for us to detect. It communicates through the water itself. Each fish is aware of its neighbors. Each neighbor is aware of its neighbors, until the entire school becomes something that operates like single vast organism. One mind distributed across 10,000 bodies, moving through the blue water with a coherence no individual fish could achieve alone. There is something in this that feels instructive. The most graceful things, sometimes, are the things that have released their individuality into something larger. Surrender under the right conditions is not defeat. It is elegance. Sea turtles drift here, ancient, unhurried. Their limbs make slow, almost ceremonial sweeps through the water. A leatherback sea turtle, the largest of its kind, can weigh as much as 900 kilograms. And yet it moves through the water with ease. An ease that seems to belong to a creature made entirely of breath and light. Leatherbacks have been swimming these oceans for more than 100 million years. They watched the dinosaurs rise. They watched them fall. They changed very little in response to either event. The leatherback carries its age the way the ocean carries its age. Without display, without complaint, simply by continuing. It does not need to announce itself. It does not need to be recognized. It swims. It has always swum. The water receives it the same way it receives everything. Without preference, without distinction, with the same total, democratic acceptance. Jellyfish drift through the epipelagic zone in slow, translucent bells. The moon jellyfish is pale and semi-transparent. It is barely more substantial than sea glass. It pulsates with a rhythm, almost exactly like a sleeping heartbeat. Slow, even, patient. They have no brain, no heart, no bones. They are 95% water, surrounded by water, moving through water. They have been doing this, in essentially this same form, for at least 500 million years. Perhaps longer. Perhaps so long that the number ceases to be informative and becomes instead a kind of meditation. 500 million years of drifting. 500 million years of pulsing through warm water under distant light. There is something in that fact that asks the restless mind to be still. If the jellyfish has endured 500 million years without urgency, without ambition, without a single anxious thought, then perhaps the night ahead of us is not so long after all. The epipelagic zone holds other wonders that most people have never fully considered. Whale sharks move through the upper ocean. They are the largest fish in the ocean. They stretch to 12 or 15 meters in length. Their bodies are patterned with pale spots, like a sky seen through leaves. They move with a gentleness that seems impossible given their scale. They feed on plankton, on the smallest things. They open those enormous mouths and let the ocean flow through them. They filter out the microscopic organisms drifting in their billions just below the surface. The largest fish in the sea is sustained entirely by the smallest. There is a kind of balance in that. The Portuguese man-o-war drifts at the very surface. It is not quite a jellyfish. It is not quite a single animal. It is a colonial organism, something like the siphonophores we will meet in deeper water. Its gas-filled float rides the surface like a small, iridescent sail. It is colored in blues and pinks that seem too bright for the open ocean. Its tentacles trail below it for meters. They drift on currents the man-o-war itself cannot direct. It goes where the wind takes it, where the current takes it. It has no preference about destination. It simply exists in the moving water, trailing its long threads of awareness behind it. Patient and strangely beautiful, entirely at the mercy of forces much larger than itself. And it thrives. It has always thrived. Because surrender to the current in the right proportion is not weakness. It is one of the most successful survival strategies the ocean has ever produced. But we are descending. As we pass through 100 meters, the last warm shafts of sunlight grow thin and pale. We pass through the thermocline. This is a boundary layer where the temperature of the water drops sharply. The density of the water increases. The whole character of the sea begins to change. You can feel it. A coolness comes, not from wind or weather, from depth itself, from the simple, geological fact of distance from the sun. The water here is perhaps 8 or 10 degrees Celsius, roughly 45 degrees Fahrenheit. It is extraordinarily still. The thermocline acts as a kind of ceiling to mixing. The warm, storm-tossed surface waters and the cold, motionless deep waters meet here. They largely decline to mingle. Two worlds sharing a boundary without sharing their nature. We pass through it like a slow breath. We enter the Mesopelagic Zone. The Twilight Zone. The Mesopelagic Zone extends from 200 meters down to approximately 1,000 meters, from roughly 600 to 3,000 feet beneath the surface. It is, in every meaningful sense, a world of permanent dusk. The light that reaches here is so attenuated and diluted that it arrives as little more than a suggestion, a blue-gray memory of daylight, enough perhaps to distinguish up from down, enough to silhouette a shape moving above you, but not enough to read by, not enough to work by, not enough to grow by. Plants cannot survive here. Not true plants. Not the kind that depend on photosynthesis. Not the kind that need the alchemy of sunlight and carbon dioxide and chlorophyll. Below the Epipelagic Zone, the primary producers of the ocean cannot follow us. The phytoplankton cannot follow. The microscopic algae cannot follow. The floating meadows of the sea cannot follow. And yet the Mesopelagic Zone is teeming. Not with the obvious, colorful abundance of a coral reef. Not with the warm, visible bustle of the sunlit zone. But with a quiet, distributed, extraordinary population of creatures. Creatures that have adapted to live in the perpetual blue dusk of the Middle Sea. Scientists estimate that the Mesopelagic Zone may contain 10 times more fish than all the world's surface oceans combined. 10 times more. A staggering, almost incomprehensible biomass. Hidden in the dim water. Largely unstudied. Largely unseen. A hidden world thriving in the twilight. Operating on its own terms and its own timescale. Indifferent to whether or not we know it is there. One of the most remarkable phenomena of this zone is the daily vertical migration. It is perhaps the largest migration of any animals on Earth. And most people have never heard of it. Every day, as night falls on the ocean surface above, billions of small creatures begin the long swim upward. Tiny fish, shrimp, squid, copepods, and countless other animals. They rise through hundreds of meters of dark water. They ascend in vast, coordinated, invisible columns. They feed in the rich, productive surface waters under the cover of darkness. Then as dawn approaches, they turn. They descend again, back into the dim, back into the cool, back into the safety of depth. This migration happens every day, every single day, in every ocean on Earth. It has been happening continuously, without interruption, for tens of millions of years. This nightly rising and sinking of billions of organisms moves an enormous quantity of carbon. The carbon travels in the bodies of these creatures from the surface to the deep. It is considered one of the most important mechanisms in the global carbon cycle. The ocean breathes through this migration. The planet regulates itself in part through this daily, silent, ancient pulse. And we know almost nothing about it. We observe it with sonar as a great, diffuse scattering layer, a shadow on the screen that rises each evening and sinks each morning. But the individual lives within it remain largely invisible to us. The small dramas, the small extinctions, the feeding and the fleeing, the brief, dark couplings of creatures we have never properly named. A migration larger than any land migration ever recorded on Earth, happening every night, in every ocean. And most people will pass their entire lives without once wondering about it. But what I want you to focus on now is the light, not the sunlight. The sunlight is nearly gone. I mean the other light, the light that lives in the water itself. Bioluminescence. The word comes from the Latin bios, meaning life, and lumen, meaning light. Living light. In the Mesopelagic Zone, in the twilight and the dark that follows, living light is everywhere. It is one of the most common abilities in the animal kingdom, and one of the least celebrated. More than 75% of all deep-sea organisms are capable of producing their own light. Some estimates put it closer to 90% in certain depth ranges. Bioluminescence has evolved independently in entirely unrelated lineages of life, at least 40 separate times. It appears in bacteria, in fungi, in worms and fish and squid and jellyfish and crustaceans and sharks and countless others. It is one of those evolutionary solutions so effective that life has discovered it over and over again. Like a mathematical truth being independently proven by different civilizations on different continents. The chemistry of bioluminescence is a controlled oxidation reaction at its core. A molecule called luciferin reacts with oxygen in the presence of an enzyme called luciferase. This releases energy in the form of photons rather than heat. It is an extraordinarily efficient process. A firefly converts nearly 100% of the energy in the reaction into visible light. An incandescent light bulb converts only about 5% of its energy into light. The rest is wasted as heat. Life, it turns out, is better at making light than we are. It has had longer to practice. It has had 500 million years of dark water to work in. In that time, it has refined the chemistry of living light into something approaching perfection. The light produced by most marine bioluminescence is blue-green. Not by accident. Blue-green light travels farther through seawater than any other color. Red light is absorbed within the first few meters. Even green light fades before 100 meters. But blue-green persists. It carries. It can travel across meaningful distances in the dim water of the Mesopelagic Zone. That is precisely why evolution selected for it, over and over again, in lineage after unrelated lineage. The dark is universal. And life's answer to the dark is always, in the end, the same shade of blue. Imagine sinking slowly through dark water. The blue above you is now almost imperceptibly faint, a ghost of brightness at the very upper limit of your vision. And all around you, in the middle distance, in the near distance, practically brushing your fingertips, there is light. Small blue-green pulses, single flashes lasting a fraction of a second. Soft, cool, electric. A dinoflagellate flares as you pass through it. It is a single-celled organism, less than a millimeter across. It was disturbed by the bow wave of your body. Then another flares. Then a dozen. As your movement stirs the water, a whole constellation of microscopic blue-green sparks erupts in your wake. You leave a trail of cold fire. You are a disturbance moving through a field of sleeping light. Everywhere you pass, the light briefly wakes. Sailors have always known this. Ancient mariners watched the water glow blue-green in the bow waves of their ships, in the churning foam of breaking waves. They called it sea fire. They did not know what made it, only that the sea was alive with something they could not name, something that revealed itself only when disturbed. Only in the dark, deeper and larger lights begin to appear. A siphonophore drifts past. It is one of the strangest creatures in the ocean, and one of the most beautiful. A siphonophore is not quite a single animal. It is a colony, a cooperative of individual organisms called zooids. Each zooid is specialized for a different function. Each is incapable of surviving independently, but together they form something that functions as a coherent being. Some zooids provide locomotion, small throbbing bells that pulse in unison, drawing the colony through the water. Some zooids feed. They trail long, stinging tentacles through the water to capture prey. Some reproduce. Some are purely structural. Some are purely defensive. Together, they form a body that can extend to 40, 50, even 60 meters in length. That is longer than a blue whale. It makes the siphonophore the longest animal on Earth. A single animal the length of a city block, composed of hundreds of individuals, each doing its part, each depending completely on the others, moving through the dark ocean as one continuous luminous thing. In the mesopelagic twilight, a siphonophore glows. It hangs in the water column like a living chandelier, like a sentence written in pale blue fire. The light pulses slowly along its length, a wave of bioluminescence traveling from the trailing tentacles to the leading swimming bells. A slow, rhythmic communication from one part of the colony to another. It has been drifting like this, in exactly this way, for 400 million years. It does not know urgency. It does not know haste. It knows only the slow pulse of its own communal body. The drift of the water. The dark. The lanternfish moves through the mesopelagic zone in great schools. They are small fish, rarely more than 15 centimeters long. But they are present in numbers that defy easy comprehension. There are perhaps 600 species of lanternfish. Together, they may account for 65% of all deep-sea fish biomass. They carry, on the underside of their bodies, rows of small glowing organs called photophores, tiny windows of cold blue light, arranged in species-specific patterns, like the running lights of a small aircraft, like the arrangement of stars in a constellation unique to their kind. The photophores of the lanternfish serve multiple purposes. Some are used in a process called counter-relumination. By producing light on their undersides that matches the faint downwelling light from above, the fish erases its own shadow. To a predator looking upward from below, a lanternfish becomes invisible. Its silhouette is replaced with a wash of dim, sky blue light that blends into the background glow. It hides in plain sight by becoming indistinguishable from the ambient luminosity of the twilight zone. Other photophores are used for communication. Males and females of the same species recognize one another by the arrangement of their lights. In a world where color is impossible, the pattern of light becomes a language, a grammar of illumination, a way of saying, I am here. I am the same as you. Come closer. There are fish in the Mesopelagic Zone that carry a single photophore positioned directly below each eye. They use it as a searchlight, a brief directional flash, illuminating the water immediately in front of their faces. Then they scan for the reflected glow of prey. There are squids that can change the color and intensity of their bioluminescence in complex, flowing patterns. Waves of light move across their mantles like thought made visible, like emotion expressed in the only medium available. There are shrimp that, when threatened, release a cloud of bioluminescent fluid into the water. A glowing smoke screen, a distraction, a misdirection made of living light. The predator follows the glow. The shrimp escapes in the dark. The cloud dissipates slowly. Blue-green sparks fade one by one, until the water is dark again. And still, and the crisis has passed. And drifting through all of this are the jellyfish. Through the slow constellations, the cold fire, the silent language of the blue-green deep. At mesopelagic depths, the jellyfish are different from their surface cousins. They are larger, more deliberate. Some species here have evolved a bioluminescent alarm that may be one of the most elegant survival strategies in nature. The Hadal jellyfish is one of them. When an atala is seized by a predator, it does not attempt to escape. It cannot. It has no speed, no armor, no venom powerful enough to matter. Instead, it simply begins to flash. A brilliant, rotating bioluminescent display erupts from the jellyfish. Concentric rings of blue-green light spin outward from the center of its bell in a hypnotic spiral. This display is called the burglar alarm. It is not meant for the predator holding it. It is meant for whatever might be watching from the darkness beyond. Whatever larger predator might be attracted to the sight of a smaller predator feeding. It is a call for help, a distress beacon, a flare fired into the deep. And it works. The Hadal turns its own capture into a summons. It makes a spectacle of its own suffering and uses that spectacle to survive. There is something quietly remarkable about a creature that has no resource available to it except light, and builds its entire survival strategy around that single available thing. We have been sinking slowly through all of this, through the cold blue twilight and its living lights, its drifting siphonophores, its schools of lanternfish performing their nightly migration. Now, at the lower edge of the Mesopelagic Zone, we reach another threshold. We are at approximately 800 to 1,000 meters of depth. The last light is dying above us. Not dramatically, not suddenly, but with the quiet, gradual, inevitable patience of a candle burning down. The blue grows dimmer and more diffuse. The space between the glowing organisms grows wider, darker, more absolute. The temperature here is perhaps 4 or 5 degrees Celsius, barely above freezing. The pressure is now 80 to 100 atmospheres, 80 to 100 times the weight of the atmosphere at sea level, pressing in from every direction with an even, total, absolute force. And yet you would not feel that pressure as crushing. Not if you were a creature built for it. Pressure at depth is not the enemy of deep-sea life. It is simply the condition of it. The organisms that live here are not being crushed. They are in equilibrium. The pressure inside their bodies matches the pressure outside. The deep sea does not press against its creatures any more than the atmosphere presses against us. We carry the sky without noticing. They carry the deep without noticing. This is a truth worth sitting with for a moment. What feels from the outside like an impossible burden can be, from the inside, simply where you live. Simply the medium of your existence. Something you carry so completely that you never feel it at all. We are at the edge of the midnight zone now. The mesopelagic zone is behind us, fading upward into blue memory. Below us, the dark is complete. 1,000 meters. This is where sunlight ends. Not the faint ghost of it. Not the blue-gray suggestion that lingered through the mesopelagic twilight. The actual, physical photons of sunlight have been fully absorbed by this depth. Below this line, no photon from the sun has ever traveled. Below this line, the only light in the world is light made here, in the dark. Made by the living things that have chosen the dark as their home. This is the bathypelagic zone. The midnight zone. It extends from 1,000 meters down to approximately 4,000 meters. From roughly 3,000 feet to 13,000 feet. In terms of sheer volume, it is the largest inhabited space on Earth. The open water of the bathypelagic zone represents more living volume than every forest, every grassland, every desert, every freshwater lake and river combined. And it is a world of extraordinary, peaceful stillness. There is no current here, not in any meaningful sense. The water in the midnight zone moves slowly, on timescales of years or decades or centuries. The great thermohaline circulation takes centuries to complete a single cycle. The water you are drifting through right now may not have been at the surface since before the Renaissance. It carries its age quietly, the way very old things carry their age. Without display, without effort, simply by being. The temperature here is approximately 2 to 4 degrees Celsius, nearly freezing. The pressure is approximately 100 to 400 atmospheres. The water is absolutely clear. Not blue, not green, not any color at all. Color requires light, and there is no light here. If you could somehow see in perfect darkness, the water around you would appear as a perfect crystalline infinite nothing. An absence so complete it becomes a kind of presence. A darkness so thorough it has weight and texture. The way velvet has weight and texture. Not from mass, but from depth. From the sense that there is more of it than you can measure, extending in every direction. And it is in this zone that one of the most extraordinary animals on Earth lives out its entire existence. The giant squid, Architeuthis dux. Say it slowly. Architeuthis dux. It means loosely, the ruling squid from the deep. And there is something right about that name. Something that feels earned. The giant squid is one of the most remarkable forms that life on Earth has ever assumed. For centuries, the giant squid existed only as myth. as legend, as the kraken of Norwegian sailors, the sea monster of 100 maritime traditions, the many-armed darkness beneath the hull. Ancient maps placed it in the blank spaces with the notation, "Here there are monsters." And for once, the blank spaces were right. There was something there, something large and real and strange and ancient. But the giant squid was not a monster. It never was. It was simply a very large animal going about its life in the dark. The monster was a story we told ourselves, because the alternative was harder to accept. The idea that something so large and so alien could simply exist, peacefully and purposefully, in the dark. Monsters, at least, we have a relationship with. They want something from us. The giant squid wants nothing from us at all. It does not know we exist. And in that indifference is something more humbling than any monster could be. The first confirmed photographs of a living giant squid in its natural habitat were not taken until 2004. By that point, we had already mapped the surface of Mars. We had already sequenced the human genome. We had built and launched and retrieved multiple generations of space telescopes. And yet the largest invertebrate on the planet had never been photographed alive in its natural habitat. An animal that weighs as much as a large man and stretches to the length of a school bus. That fact deserves a long, quiet moment of consideration. Everything we thought we knew about this animal was assembled from corpses and fragments, from the evidence of its existence found in the stomachs of sperm whales. We inferred its life from the ruins of it. We studied its remains and tried to imagine what it had been in the dark when it was alive. The body of the giant squid is called the mantle. It is a muscular, torpedo-shaped structure that can reach 2 meters in length, roughly the height of a tall person. It is pale, ivory white or the faintest rose-tinged cream, with patches of deep brick red where the chromatophores are dense and active. Chromatophores are the pigment-containing cells. In darkness, the colors serve no visual function. They are perhaps vestigial, or perhaps they serve chemical purposes we do not yet understand. But if you could somehow illuminate a giant squid in the midnight zone, you would see something beautiful, something ancient and strangely dignified. A body built for the deep in every detail. The mantle narrows at the rear into 2 broad, triangular fins, not for fast propulsion, for slow, precise maneuvering. The giant squid can move quickly when it must. It propels itself by forcing water through a muscular siphon, a jet propulsion system of extraordinary simplicity and effectiveness. But in the midnight zone, it rarely needs to move quickly. Quick movement costs energy. Energy is scarce in the deep. The giant squid moves most of the time the way everything in the deep moves. Slowly, deliberately, conserving every calorie. It drifts with the near stillness of the water around it. Its arms trail below or fan to the sides. Its great body hangs in the dark like something suspended in thought. Like something that decided long ago that patience is more useful than speed. That waiting, perfectly still in the absolute dark, is more efficient than any movement it could make. From the front of the mantle extends the head. From the head extend 8 arms. Each arm is muscular and flexible. Each is lined on its inner surface with suckers. Not smooth suckers, as in an octopus. The suckers of the giant squid are ringed with small, sharp, chitinous teeth. Serrated, like tiny saw blades. They grip prey with a tenacity that leaves circular scars in the skin. Sperm whales, the primary predator of the giant squid, are often found with constellations of these scars on their heads and flanks. Each scar is a record of a struggle in the complete darkness of the midnight zone between two enormous, extraordinary creatures. Two animals locked in this same ancient struggle for millions of years. In the dark, in the cold, in the crushing silence of the deep, with no witness but the water, the whale descends, holding its breath as all whales must. It breathes air because it came from the land long ago. It carries that legacy in its lungs. The squid defends itself with arms and teeth and the explosive force of a jet of water. Which of them prevails on any given night, in any given depth of the midnight zone, we will likely never know. In addition to the 8 arms, the giant squid possesses 2 tentacles. Longer, more slender, more specialized than the arms. These hunting tentacles can extend to perhaps 8 or 10 meters in very large specimens. They end in a flattened, club-like pad densely covered with suckers. The tentacles are the striking organs. They extend with explosive speed, faster than the eye can follow, faster than conscious thought. They wrap around prey and draw it back toward the beak. The beak sits at the center of the ring of arms and tentacles, hidden in a mass of muscular tissue. It is hard chitin, the same material as an insect's exoskeleton. It is shaped with remarkable precision, like the beak of a parrot. Hooked, sharp, powerful enough to sever the spine of a large fish in a single bite. The beak is perhaps the hardest structure in the entire body. So hard that it does not decompose with the rest of the animal after death. Sperm whale stomachs often contain dozens of giant squid beaks, the indigestible remnants of meals taken in the darkness, months or years before. An archive of meals, each one a story from the midnight zone that can never be fully told. But it is the eyes that stay with you. The eyes of the giant squid are the largest eyes of any living animal on Earth. Each one can be as large as 30 centimeters in diameter, roughly the size of a dinner plate, large enough that you could hold one in both hands. The pupil alone is the size of a tennis ball. That dark, horizontal window into whatever passes for vision in the midnight zone. Why so large? In a world of absolute darkness, where no sunlight penetrates, what use is an eye? What could justify the biological cost of building and maintaining such an enormous optical instrument? The answer, researchers believe, may lie with the sperm whale. That primary predator, that ancient nemesis. A sperm whale in pursuit is large enough and moves fast enough to create bioluminescent disturbance in the water around it. The tiny organisms of the midnight zone, disturbed by the passage of this enormous shape, flash and pulse in its wake. The giant squid's massive eyes are theorized to detect that specific bioluminescent signature, to see the ghost light that surrounds a hunting whale, to see the approach of danger across vast distances of dark water in time to escape. The eye of the giant squid is a listening device for light, a detector so sensitive it can pick up the faintest, most diffuse photons in the darkest place on Earth and translate them into something like warning. It sees not the world, but the disturbance of the world, not the thing itself, but the luminous shadow it casts as it passes through a field of living light. We know almost nothing about how the giant squid reproduces. We have never observed it hunting. We have never observed two living individuals interacting. We have never seen a juvenile in the wild. Our entire understanding of this creature is assembled almost entirely from dead specimens found floating at the surface, from body parts recovered from whale stomachs, from a small number of brief, fragmentary encounters captured on deep-sea cameras. It lives its whole life in the dark. It hunts in the dark. It mates in the dark. It dies in the dark. And only very rarely does a dead giant squid find its way to the surface, where human eyes can see it for the first time. Washed up on a cold beach, already beginning to dissolve. There is something extraordinarily moving about that. A creature of enormous size and complexity and intelligence. Yes, intelligence. The giant squid possesses a brain wrapped around its esophagus in a shape unlike any other brain on Earth, and a nervous system of considerable sophistication. This creature lives out an entire life, a full and complete existence in absolute darkness, under pressure so immense that we can visit it only briefly and at great expense. And we understand almost nothing of what it experiences. The giant squid has an inner life. It perceives. It responds. It makes decisions. And all of those decisions, every one of them, are made in absolute darkness. At the bottom of a world we have barely begun to visit. Let the giant squid drift past you now, in your imagination in the dark. It is not frightening. It is ancient. It is patient. It is perfectly, entirely at home. It passes like a pale ghost. That long ivory mantle, those great dark eyes, those trailing arms moving with the slow, fluid elegance of something that has never needed to hurry. It disappears back into the absolute dark, back into the velvet nothing, back into the 300-million-year-old night that is its world. There are other inhabitants of the midnight zone, moving through the dark around us as we descend. The anglerfish is perhaps the most recognizable of all deep-sea creatures. It carries a small, luminous lure that dangles from a modified spine above its enormous jaws, like a lantern on a fishing rod. The light is produced by bioluminescent bacteria living in a small bulb at the tip of the lure. It pulses with a slow, hypnotic rhythm in the absolute darkness. Small fish and crustaceans are drawn by the light, drawn the way any eye is drawn to light in darkness, by simple, ancient, inescapable instinct. They swim toward it, and the anglerfish waits, motionless, patient beyond any human conception of patience. Its jaws open at the last moment with a speed that the surrounding water barely has time to register. The female anglerfish can be 20 times the size of the male. The male, upon reaching sexual maturity, has one biological imperative: to find a female. He navigates the midnight zone by scent. Following the chemical trail, she releases into the water. When he finds her, he bites into her side and does not let go. Over weeks and months, his circulatory system fuses with hers. His eyes degenerate. His internal organs, no longer necessary for independent survival, are slowly reabsorbed. He becomes little more than a small appendage of sperm-producing tissue attached to her body, kept alive by her blood, providing fertilization whenever her eggs are ready. A male anglerfish, once attached, is never alone again. He is part of something larger. He has surrendered his independence completely, and in doing so, has found a permanent home in the dark. The viperfish moves through the midnight zone with long, needle-like teeth so large they cannot fit inside its closed mouth. They curve upward and outward, gleaming faintly with their own bioluminescence. A trap set in the dark for anything that drifts too close. The dragonfish trails a long, slender barbel beneath its chin, tipped with a glowing lure, dangling it through the water column like a question in the dark. The barrel-eye fish has a transparent, fluid-filled dome for a head. Through this dome, its large, tubular eyes can be seen pointing upward, scanning the faint downwelling light above for the silhouettes of prey. When the barrel-eye detects something above it, the entire eye rotates within the dome, tracking the target, fixing it with that unwavering upward gaze. The barrel-eye sees the world through its own skull. Its transparency is its vision. All of these creatures, all of this life, in the absolute dark, in the cold, in the silence, going about the business of existing with the same quiet determination that life has always brought to existence, regardless of the conditions, regardless of the depth, regardless of whether any surface-dwelling creature has ever noticed or cared or known they were there. We have arrived at the lower boundary of the midnight zone, 4,000 meters beneath the surface. The pressure is approximately 400 atmospheres. The temperature is 1 to 2 degrees Celsius. Below us, the open water gives way to something solid, something flat and ancient and incredibly soft. The abyssal plain. We have entered the Epipelagic Zone. The abyss. This zone extends from 4,000 meters down to approximately 6,000 meters. And though it is called the abyss, it is in reality a place of extraordinary quiet beauty. Because in the abyss it snows. Not water snow, not frozen precipitation falling from clouds, but something older and slower, and in its own way more beautiful. Marine snow. Look upward. Let your attention drift upward through 4,000 meters of dark water toward the distant surface world. And you will see it, drifting down through all that darkness, falling with the infinite, unhurried patience of something that has forever to arrive. Marine snow is the collective name for the continuous rain of organic material that falls from the sunlit zones. It falls down through all the intermediate layers and into the deep. It is made of everything that dies or is shed or is excreted in the upper ocean. Phytoplankton that bloomed and divided and lived their brief, brilliant lives in the warmth of the surface and then died. Zooplankton, the cast-off exoskeletons of molting crustaceans. Thin, pale, ghostly shells that drift downward like shed wings. The microscopic fecal pellets of tiny animals bound in mucus. The scales of fish. The broken fragments of diatoms. Those extraordinary single-celled organisms encased in intricate silica shells of mathematical beauty. Shells that look under a microscope like the most delicate glass ornaments ever constructed. Each one a tiny, perfect geometric object, sinking through miles of dark water toward the floor. Dead bacteria. The mucus nets of larvaceans. Larvaceans are small, transparent, tadpole-like animals. They build elaborate mucus houses around themselves. Then they abandon them when the filters clog. They leave the empty structures to drift downward, carrying with them whatever organic particles they have caught. These abandoned houses are called giant larvacean mucus palaces. They can be 30 centimeters across. Delicate, intricate, entirely invisible structures made of mucus, spiraling downward through thousands of meters of dark water, carrying their cargo of trapped particles toward the seafloor. The deep ocean is full of things like this. Things that seem impossibly delicate for a world of extreme pressure and absolute cold. Things that remind you that life, given enough time, finds a way to be beautiful in the most unlikely places. All of this drifts downward. Slowly, so slowly. A single particle of marine snow may take weeks to travel from the surface to the abyssal plain. Weeks of slow, spiraling, drifting descent through zones of changing temperature and pressure and chemistry. It is consumed and partially reconstituted several times along the way. Organisms at various depths eat and excrete and shed, each one adding their own contribution to the falling material, each one transforming it slightly. By the time a particle of marine snow reaches the abyssal plain, it has traveled thousands of meters. It has participated in dozens of metabolic cycles. It carries in itself a compressed history of the surface world, a record of the sunlit life above, translated into chemistry and slowly surrendered to the deep. Imagine drifting in it. You are suspended in the abyss at 4,000 or 5,000 meters of depth. Absolute darkness, water barely above freezing, and all around you, falling past you from above, is the snow. Each particle is tiny. Most are smaller than a grain of rice. Some are smaller than a grain of sand. But each one, if you could somehow see it, would appear as a small, soft, irregular mote of pale material. Organic, fragile, drifting with a slight, wandering motion. As the infinitesimal currents of the deep ocean carry it left, then right, then slowly, slowly down. The cumulative effect is exactly what it sounds like. Snow, the quiet, patient, unending snowfall of the deep. And the effect it has on the mind, on the imagination, as you watch it fall, is one of extraordinary peace. There is something about watching things fall slowly and without urgency that speaks to something very deep in the nervous system. Snow, falling leaves, dust motes in slanted sunlight. These things slow the heartbeat. They suggest that time is not a rushing torrent, but a gentle, unhurried settling. That everything arrives eventually. That patience is not the absence of motion, but the most honest form of it. Let the marine snow fall around you now. Let each particle carry something down with it. Something you no longer need to hold. The sediment on the abyssal plain can be thousands of meters thick. In some places, the seafloor is covered in a layer of ooze, silica ooze, or calcareous ooze, composed almost entirely of the microscopic shells of dead plankton. It has been building up, layer by layer, particle by particle, for 100 million years or more. The rate of sedimentation in the deep ocean is almost incomprehensibly slow. In some regions, the sediment accumulates at a rate of approximately 1 centimeter every 1,000 years. 1 centimeter every 1,000 years, which means that a layer of sediment 2 meters thick represents 200 million years of accumulated time. 200 million years of marine snow drifting down in the dark, settling, compressing, building up with the patience of geology. The abyssal plain is not merely a place. It is a record, a deep archive of everything that has ever lived and died in the ocean above it, compressed into soft, pale layers of immeasurable antiquity. Life persists here, on the abyssal plain, in the cold and the dark and the silence. Sea cucumbers move across the sediment surface on slow, deliberate tube feet. They are called holothurians. They ingest the ooze and extract the last available nutrition from the organic matter within it. They are not fast. They do not need to be. Some species may move only a few meters in an entire year. Their metabolic rate is reduced to the absolute minimum compatible with life. A kind of permanent walking near sleep. A metabolism so slow it approaches stillness. The sea cucumber does not experience the abyss as a hostile place. It experiences it as home, as the only home it has ever known, and the only home its ancestors have known for hundreds of millions of years. Brittle stars spread their long, flexible arms across the sediment. They are close relatives of starfish, with arms that radiate from a small central disc. They lie in postures of relaxed, geometric elegance, filtering organic particles from the water. Sea spiders walk across the plain with improbably thin legs, with a delicacy that seems impossible at 4,000 meters of depth. Polychaete worms, known as bristle worms, move through and across the sediment in numbers that are difficult to comprehend. One scientific trawl of abyssal sediment found more than 200 distinct species of polychaetes. In a single sample, the size of a dinner plate. 200 species. In a world where, until recently, most scientists assumed almost nothing lived. The deep ocean is not empty. It never was. We simply lacked the patience for a long time to look. On the abyssal plain, there are also the nodules. Manganese nodules. Dark, potato-shaped concretions of metal that grow on the sediment surface. They grow at rates so slow, they are almost theoretical. A single nodule may grow by a few millimeters every million years. They are among the slowest growing solid structures on Earth. And they litter certain sections of the abyssal plain in quantities that are almost incomprehensible. Billions upon billions of dark, rounded forms resting on the pale sediment. Like a field of sleeping stones. Each one is a record of geological time. Each one has been forming in absolute darkness under hundreds of atmospheres of pressure, for longer than the human species has existed. They rest there with the absolute patience of matter that has no concept of waiting, because waiting implies an expectation, and the nodules expect nothing. They simply are. And in the being is a kind of teaching, that the mind at this hour, at this depth, is finally quiet enough to receive. And everywhere, in all directions, the snow continues to fall. Softly, without end, carrying the surface whirled down to the deep, carrying everything in time to where it ultimately belongs. We go deeper still, past the edge of the abyssal plain, down into the places where the seafloor splits open, where tectonic forces have pulled the Earth's crust apart or driven one plate beneath another, and the bottom simply drops away. These are the trenches, the Hadal zones, named for Hades, the Greek underworld, the place beneath everything, the absolute below. The Hadal-Pelagic Zone encompasses all ocean depth below 6,000 meters. Hadal environments exist almost exclusively in the ocean trenches. Those long, narrow, extraordinarily deep gashes in the seafloor. They mark the subduction zones of tectonic plates. There are approximately 37 known Hadal trenches in the world's oceans. Most are in the Pacific. Tonight, we are descending into the Philippine Trench, one of the deepest places on Earth, and one of the most geologically extraordinary. The Philippine Trench runs for approximately 1,200 kilometers along the eastern coast of the Philippine archipelago. The Philippine Sea Plate slides beneath the Philippine Mobile Belt here. This process of slow, continuous subduction has been ongoing for millions of years. At its deepest point, the Galathea depth, the trench reaches approximately 10,500 meters, more than 10 kilometers straight down from the surface, more than 10 kilometers below where we began, floating on that calm and starlit sea. As we descend past 6,000 meters, the pressure increases to 600 atmospheres, 700, 800. The pressure at the bottom of the Philippine Trench is approximately 1,000 atmospheres, 1,000 times the weight of the atmosphere at sea level, 1,000 times the pressure we feel right now in the warm air of an ordinary room. And yet the pressure here does not feel oppressive. Our instinct, our surface world instinct, is to imagine pressure as crushing, as threatening, as a force working against life. But the organisms that live in the Hadal zone do not experience the pressure that way. The pressure does not press against them any more than the weight of the air presses against a bird in flight. It is simply the medium, the condition, the environment that has shaped them over millions of years of evolution, the environment to which their every cell is calibrated. Imagine instead that the pressure feels like weight, like the heaviness you feel at the very end of a long day. That pleasant, whole-body heaviness that means rest is near. Like the feeling of warm blankets, heavy and still, pressed down by gravity, holding you in place. The pressure of the deep is not a force working against existence. It is a force working around it, containing it, holding everything in. Let that pressure now hold you. Let it settle through you like warmth. Let it press all the restlessness out. Gently, without urgency, the walls of the Philippine Trench descend in long, steep slopes of rock and sediment. The interior walls of a geological wound, millions of years in the making. The sediment that accumulates in the trenches is different from abyssal plain sediment. It slides and tumbles down the steep walls. It gathers at the bottom in a thick, soft, compressed layer. Organic material from above concentrates in the trenches, funneled by the geometry of the seafloor. This concentration of nutrition supports, paradoxically, a denser and more varied community of life than exists on the surrounding abyssal plain. The trench collects the world's falling gifts. Everything that drifts downward eventually finds its way here, into the lowest point, into the deepest accumulation. The trench is, in a sense, the ocean's floor drain, the place where everything settles eventually when it has been falling long enough. The organisms of the Hadal zone are among the most extraordinary on Earth. Amphipods thrive in the deepest trenches. They are small crustaceans, distant cousins of the beach hoppers you might find under driftwood at the tide line. Their numbers surprised every scientist who first discovered them. Hadal amphipods of the genus Hierndalea have been found at depths greater than 10,000 meters. They are small, a few centimeters long, and pale, almost colorless. Color requires light, and there is no light here. Pigment requires metabolic energy, and energy here is always conserved. They move through the sediment and through the water column with quick, purposeful efficiency, scavenging organic material from the marine snow and from larger food falls. Those extraordinary events when something large dies on the surface and sinks all the way to the Hadal floor. A whale fall is one of the most significant ecological events in the ocean. the descent of an entire whale carcass to the deep sea floor. A single large whale can provide food to the deep sea community for 50 to 100 years. Not days, not weeks, years, decades. The carcass is consumed in stages by a succession of organisms. Each stage supports different species. Each species gives way to the next as the resource changes in character. In the early months, mobile scavengers consume the soft tissue. Sleeper sharks, hagfish, ratfish, amphipods. Later, enrichment opportunist species colonize the exposed skeleton. Polychaete worms, crustaceans. Later still, bacteria break down the lipids in the whale's bones and produce hydrogen sulfide. An entirely different community blooms on the skeleton, one based on chemosynthesis rather than photosynthesis. A whale in death becomes an entire ecosystem, a gift from the surface world to the deep, delivered slowly over 100 years in layers of nourishment and succession and transformation. The deep ocean receives everything eventually. It is patient enough to wait. There are snailfish in the Philippine Trench. Snailfish are members of the family Leporidae. They are the deepest living fish known to science. Small, pale, soft-bodied, and translucent. They look almost unfinished, like a sketch of a fish rather than a completed one. Their skin is loose and gelatinous. Their bones are flexible rather than rigid. Their bodies are adapted to the crushing pressure of the Hadal zone in ways that are elegant and deeply functional. At extreme depth, the lipid membranes of cell walls would normally become too rigid to function. The cold and the pressure would solidify them, preventing the movement of molecules across the cell boundary that is essential to life. Hadal organisms, including the snailfish, counteract this with molecules called piezolites. Piezolites are chemical compounds that stabilize the membranes against pressure-induced rigidity. The most common of these in Hadal fish is a compound called trimethylamine oxide. It is the same compound that gives deep-sea fish their characteristic smell. The smell of the deep ocean, that slightly mineral, slightly ammoniac quality, is in part the smell of life solving the problem of pressure. Life has a smell, and that smell is the smell of a solution. The smell of an answer, arrived at over millions of years of quiet, dark, patient chemistry. The snailfish of the Hadal zone have no eyes. Or rather, they may have vestigial eye structures. The remnants of eyes, small and non-functional and covered by skin. In a world where there is no light, eyes are not merely unnecessary. They are metabolically expensive. Building and maintaining a complex optical organ requires energy. Energy in the Hadal zone is precious. And so, over millions of years, the eyes were quietly reabsorbed, repurposed, the resources allocated elsewhere. Instead, the Hadal snailfish navigates its world through pressure sensitivity and lateral line systems. These organs detect minute changes in water pressure. They allow the fish to sense movement and vibration through the water with extraordinary precision. It knows its world through touch at a distance, through the feeling of things moving nearby, conducted through the medium of the water itself. It does not need to see the darkness. It feels it. Every current, every vibration, every shift in pressure tells it something about the world it inhabits, more completely and more honestly than sight ever could in a place where there is nothing to see. There are foraminifera in the Philippine Trench. They are single-celled organisms, amoeba-like creatures. They build elaborate shells around themselves from grains of sediment or secreted calcium carbonate. They extend long, thread-like pseudopods out into the water to capture food. In the Hadal zone, some foraminifera grow to extraordinary sizes. The xenophyophores are technically single-celled organisms, though they can grow to 20 centimeters across. They are among the largest individual cells on Earth, a single cell the size of a softball, living at the bottom of the world's deepest trenches, extending its thread-like processes through the sediment in search of organic particles. The xenophyophore moves so slowly that movement is barely the right word. It simply extends. It reaches. Over days and weeks, it explores the few centimeters of sediment around its position, with the patience of something that has entirely dissolved the boundary between living and waiting. There is no hurry. There has never been any hurry. The xenophyophore has been here, in essentially this form, for hundreds of millions of years. And in all that time, it has never once had anywhere to be. The Hadal trenches are also geologically active places. The subduction that created the Philippine Trench is an ongoing process. The Philippine Sea Plate continues to slide beneath the Philippine Mobile Belt at a rate of several centimeters per year. This movement generates earthquakes, deep, slow, enormous shifts in the rock below the sediment, felt throughout the water column as a low, subsonic vibration, propagating outward through the ocean in all directions simultaneously. The organisms of the Hadal zone have evolved alongside these tremors. They have never known a world without them. The occasional shudder of the deep earth is simply one more feature of the environment they inhabit. No more alarming to a Hadal amphipod than the feeling of wind is to a sparrow. At the very bottom of the Philippine Trench, at 10,500 meters, the seafloor is soft. That is the first thing. It is softer than you imagined. The accumulated sediment has a quality almost like fine flour, or fresh snow, or the very softest earth. The deep-sea organisms that live here move across it gently, with great care. They leave tracks and trails and small circular depressions that will remain undisturbed for centuries. The Hadal floor is marked everywhere with these signs of life. Tracks, burrows, the circular feeding depressions of holothurians, the delicate branching trails of polychaete worms, the small, precise indentations of amphipod feeding. In the total absence of light, in the total absence of any disturbance, these tracks persist. They accumulate. The floor of the trench is a record of activity, layer upon layer of the traces of living things, preserved in the soft sediment of the absolute deep, evidence of lives being lived in the deepest place on Earth, on timescales and in conditions we can barely begin to imagine. And the water above all of it is perfectly still. You are at the bottom of the world now, 10,000 meters below the surface, 10 kilometers of ocean above you, 10 kilometers of water column, each zone with its own character and its own inhabitants, stacked above you like the layers of a very old dream. And it is quiet, so quiet. The pressure holds you the way sleep holds you. From all sides, without preference, without urgency. There is nothing here that needs you to do anything. The marine snow falls above you through all those kilometers of dark water, drifting past the giant squid and the lanternfish, past the siphonophores and the anchovy schools, past the moon jellies and the surface starlight, all the way down to here. And each particle lands softly, without a sound. The snailfish drifts past, unhurried. The amphipods move through the sediment, quiet as thought. The water holds everything. The weight of it is warm. Let your breathing slow. Let the dark be comfortable. You are held. Everything is held. The ocean has always been here. It will always be here. It was here before the first creature learned to breathe. It will be here long after the last one forgets how. And somewhere in its deep, in the soft sediment, in the still water, something small and pale and perfectly adapted to the dark is moving slowly through the world it has always known. It does not know you are here. It does not need to. It simply moves. And the water accepts it. And the dark holds it. And the snow falls all around it, softly, without end. The way night falls. The way sleep falls. The way everything in time settles gently into where it belongs. There is a kind of knowledge that comes only from stillness. Not the knowledge of facts or measurements or the names of things. Though we have gathered many of those tonight, carried them down through the zones like small lights in the dark. But a deeper knowledge. The knowledge that comes when the body finally stops anticipating, and the mind finally stops rehearsing, and everything that was wound tight begins, very slowly, to release. The ocean teaches this. The deep ocean especially. It has been here for 4 billion years. And in all that time, it has never once been in a hurry. The marine snow does not fall faster when it is late. The siphonophore does not glow with more urgency at the end of the day. The giant squid drifts at the same slow, suspended pace, whether it is midnight or midday. And in the midnight zone, of course, it is always midnight. It is always exactly this. The same dark. The same cold. The same perfect ancient stillness. You have traveled 10,000 meters tonight. You have passed through worlds of light and worlds of twilight and worlds of absolute dark. You have drifted past creatures that have never seen the sun, through water that has not touched the surface in centuries, over a seafloor built from the accumulated deaths of 100 million years of tiny, brilliant, improbable lives. And through all of it, the water has held you. The pressure has held you. The dark has held you, without asking anything of you, without requiring you to be anything other than what you are. A body that breathes, a mind that wanders, a consciousness that sometimes needs to be reminded that rest is not a failure. That stillness is not the same as absence. That sinking slowly through the dark is not falling. It is arriving. You are at the bottom of the world now, 10 kilometers below the surface. The ocean above you is the weight of all the distance you have traveled. And it is not heavy. It is simply there, present, real, the most patient thing that has ever existed, moving on its own timescale, in its own ancient rhythm, entirely unconcerned with the pace of any life that swims within it. Let your body be as soft as the sediment at the bottom of the Philippine Trench. Let your thoughts be as slow and sparse as the living things that move through the Hadal dark. Let the space between one breath and the next grow wide and comfortable and unhurried. There is nowhere to be tonight except here. There is nothing to do tonight except rest. The ocean has been waiting for you. It is very good at waiting. You can rest now. The ocean is breathing. And so are you. slowly, all the way down.